Thank you all for being here today for Municon. This is my very first experience doing this virtually, being a moderator, so bear with me, please. Today, this morning, we have a presentation entitled Reducing Stormwater Impacts from State Highways, a Prioritization-Based Approach. And we have Adam Lee and Jess Brown from Herrera, as well as Shannon Peterson from Thurston County Public Works. This is a pre-recorded session, but the speakers are here to answer any questions at the end. And so go ahead and put those questions in the chat box and we'll get to them after. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shannon Peterson and I am a utility planner with Thurston County. And today we're going to present Reducing Stormwater Impacts from State Highways, a prioritization-based approach. Just a little background on this project. It was initiated based on legislative changes for how stormwater fees are charged to the Department of Transportation for state limited highways. Prior to 2020, WSDOT was billed like any other ratepayer, but due to some changes to the RCW, fees collected from WSDOT are now required to be treated a little bit differently. So now that fees may be used solely for stormwater control facilities that directly reduce state highway runoff impacts, or for the implementation of BMPs that will reduce the need of such facilities. We're also now required to submit an annual plan to WSDOT showing how fees charged that year will be spent, and a progress report describing the use of charges assessed for the prior year. In March 2020, the county contracted with Herrera Environmental to identify potential sites for stormwater retrofit that are directly impacted by WSDOT runoff. The scope of the project included stakeholder coordination, identification of potential project sites, evaluation of potential project sites, and development of pre-design reports. The goal of the project was to identify retrofit sites that both are eligible for the use of the fees and are consistent with the criteria of the Storm and Surface Water Utilities capital facility plans, which include local flood control, water quality, and habitat. So with that in mind, the presentation is going to discuss our screening methods and scoring for the sites, desktop results, field investigation, project prioritization. We're going to show some potential project examples, and we're going to talk about conceptual designs. And at the end, we'll also discuss some lessons learned. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jess.
Thanks, Shannon. My name is Jess Brown, and I'm with Herrera Environmental, and I enjoy working on a variety of stormwater planning and design projects. For my piece of the presentation, I'm going to describe the methodology and results of the screening and scoring process that we developed to identify high priority areas for retrofit projects. So this figure shows the very large project study area, which consists of all state highways in Thurston County, excluding cities with MS4s regulated by the Phase 2 NPDES permit. The purpose of screening and ranking was to first identify high priority areas and then reduce the list to a manageable set for additional consideration. The first step was to map sensitive areas. We targeted wetlands, streams, other water bodies, and stream crossings because of the potential impacts of stormwater runoff to habitat, hydrology, and public health. This focus also aligns with existing regulatory framework around wetland and water quality protection. We did consider including critical aquifer recharge areas, but because most of our grids fell within these areas or a wellhead protection zone, we did not include this metric. 303D and 305D water quality listings for impaired or waters of concern were evaluated for parameters known to be associated with highway stormwater, such as copper, zinc, PAHs, herbicides, and turbidity. However, there were no listings for these parameters within our analysis areas. Next, the highway was divided into 476 grids that were for the most part 1,000 feet long and 1,000 feet wide. This allowed us to evaluate areas within 500 feet of the highway centerline that were likely to be impacted by highway runoff. We then identified intersections between analysis areas and sensitive areas. This figure shows mapped streams and other water bodies. The pink polygons represent stream crossings, and the green polygons, or the pink points, represent stream crossings, and green polygons are wetlands clipped to the analysis areas. Scoring was then used to identify potential areas of interest. Each analysis area received 1 point for a wetland or wetland buffer, 1 point for one or more streams or water bodies, and 1 point for a stream crossing the highway, for a maximum of 3 points. This scoring resulted in about 20% or 99 grids receiving the maximum score of 3 due to the presence of all 3 sensitive areas. 60% of the grids received a score of 1 or 2, and the remaining 20% of grids received no points. All highways had at least 4 grids receiving a score of 3, and I-5, SR 507, and SR 8 having had the largest number of high-scoring grids. We also observed clustering of high-scoring grids in portions of these highways. A rapid desktop assessment was then conducted to efficiently narrow down the many sites of interest for field investigation. For this step, we evaluated all 99 analysis areas with a score of 3, and also considered 3 sites identified by the county due to flooding concerns, as well as 27 sites prioritized during a WSDOT statewide assessment of stormwater retrofit needs, which was completed in July of 2017. We saw significant spatial overlap between priority areas identified by our analysis and the WSDOT evaluation. Many of the WSDOT sites spanned across multiple analysis areas. Using GIS and Street View, each area was assigned a low, medium, or high priority based on retrofit opportunity, including factors such as feasibility, property ownership, and partnering opportunities, drainage considerations such as estimated contributing area and whether runoff appeared to discharge near the sensitive area, conditions of identified sensitive areas, and the presence and condition of existing stormwater facilities. We ended up with 21 sites selected for the field investigation, with at least 1 site for each highway. An additional 11 sites were selected as potential sites to visit, some of which appeared to have access constraints. And with that, I'll hand it off to Adam.
Thanks, Jess. My name's Adam Lee. I'm a stormwater engineer with Herrera Environmental. After the desktop analysis, we spent 3 days in the field conducting site assessments of the 32 locations on our list. We looked at the potential for retrofit feasibility and the potential downstream benefits. We evaluated drainage patterns, the size of the contributing areas, downstream water body conditions, any existing stormwater facility or infrastructure conditions, locations of utilities, and rights of way, looking to see if there was room for retrofit projects. We also identified potential project ideas at this stage and noted site conditions. Of the 32 potential sites, we were able to put boots on the ground at 28 of them. 4 were not safely accessible, so we conducted drive-by assessments of those. We qualitatively ranked the sites low, medium, or high for project feasibility and potential benefits, which resulted in a list of the top 11 potential projects ranking high in both categories. During this process, some of our sites that initially ranked high were removed after gaining additional information. We had been regularly coordinating with WSDOT throughout this process, and we received feedback that they had a number of planned projects along SR 507 and SR 8, so these were removed. A potential Fish Passage stream restoration project was also removed since we wanted to focus on stormwater projects. One site that had a known flooding issue was investigated, but it was determined that the significant amount of off-site runoff, essentially an intermittent stream passing through the area, eliminated this project for feasibility. So once we had our list of high-scoring sites, we ranked these to determine the top projects to move forward. We put together a spreadsheet scoring the projects for each of these categories that are shown on the screen, and with various weightings and rankings. we heavily weighted water quality, flood and flow control benefit, and implementation. The factors going into the water quality ranking were contributing impervious area and traffic counts. The flooding and flow control category was ranked highest if there was a known flooding issue at the site. Implementation looked at a bunch of factors, including site constraints, groundwater, mapped utilities, available space, and permitting considerations, construction feasibility. It was basically a rating of the project risk. Cost and maintenance is fairly self-explanatory. Community benefit looked at the location of the site in proximity to public access. And habitat benefit looked at the potential for habitat uplift and connectivity to protected habitat. The prioritization resulted in a ranking, and we chose the top 5 sites to move forward to conceptual design. 1 was located on SR 8, 3 on US 101, 2 of which are small and close together, so we combined them into one project, and then 2 on I-5 east of Olympia. We went back to WSDOT to get concurrence with that the selected projects would be acceptable, since they all involved coordination with WSDOT and most were primarily located on WSDOT right-of-way, and would eventually be owned and maintained by the state. They expressed their preference for projects that they could maintain, but were happy to have projects solving some of their own drainage issues. Most of the projects ended up being located in the WSDOT right-of-way due to the fact that there were limited county projects that were identified directly tied to WSDOT runoff, and we weren't able to kind of go upstream of the right-of-way. We initiated infiltration testing at this time also for sites that would benefit from it. So just to quickly go over one example project, this is at Madrona Beach Road, located just below Highway 101. There's a steep embankment below the highway, which drains directly to this narrow county ditch. And when the ditch and roadway overtops, it spills across the road into the resident's driveway and has washed out his garage, causing damage in the past. This project would incorporate a rolled curb and catch basin improvements to help address this issue. So this project is a great example of leveraging WSDOT funding for a known flooding issue in the county. It also has the opportunity to provide some water quality improvement, as well as leveraging those WSDOT funds. There's also the potential for the funds to pay for continual maintenance of the ditch, which is located in the county right-of-way. This Kennedy Creek site is a good example of one of the projects located primarily in the WSDOT right-of-way. It manages mostly WSDOT runoff that currently drains to the creek untreated. The project involves a biofiltration swale retrofit in the median with earthen berms directing runoff away from the creek and filter strips along the shoulders and adjacent to a county road and park and ride. So for these projects that we moved into conceptual design, we prepared pre-designed sheets for the top projects. These sheets included a project description, detailed cost estimates, crucially the amount of WSDOT runoff that was managed, included drainage maps, renderings, and project benefits, including average pollutant load reductions. The project pre-design sheets also included quantified benefits and project design considerations, including permits required. The real overall goal was to allow the county not just to justify the WSDOT grant funding, but also have a source for other potential grant funds in the future and to queue up projects for their capital projects list. And with that, I'll pass it back to Shannon to discuss lessons learned.
So some lessons learned. Some lessons learned from the project were that going through a prioritization process allowed for a methodical refining of the results. With the weighting and scoring matrices, this allows the county to pick sites where we can get the most bang for our buck. And the project is also unique to be looking at doing work in the WSDOT right-of-way versus the point of discharge in the county. This enables us to also coordinate with WSDOT closely, and it's key for conducting these projects since WSDOT will be maintaining these projects for the long run. And then we'll also require right-of-way access for their construction. And then finally, some municipal challenges were that the fees are only used for stormwater control facilities that directly reduce state highway runoff impacts. We're not to use the fees for upstream improvements to greater systems, or for the funding of any sort of incorporated amenities. So because of these restrictions, the funding needs to be very closely tracked. And then finally, annual reports are due by the 1st of January, making it difficult for the county during the year-end closeout process. There's also no mid-year report changes, so that's something to keep in mind when finishing your annual reports. And with this, we'd like to acknowledge some folks that made this project successful. Zainab Najati with Thurston County, Joy Mashad, Joseph Geigel, and Matt Fontaine with Herrera. Thank you for your support and help with this project. And with that, we'll move on to questions.
Okay, we have a couple of questions in the chat box, and we do have some time if people want to continue asking those questions. But there are a couple of questions about the funding mechanism for this and whether or not it's unique that Thurston County gets fees from Department of Transportation.
So my understanding is that it's not unique. There are other municipalities that also charge WSDOT stormwater fees. I'm just not sure how many those are or which ones they are.
Okay, and so there's no other, well, let me make sure, I apologize. So there's some comments. That's very innovative. And let's see, the only hard part is that the jurisdiction has to charge a stormwater fee of their own right-of-ways in order to charge WSDOT. Is that correct? And how does that work?
You know, I believe that may be correct. I'm not exactly sure how the county handles those charges for our own internals. So if someone really wanted to know, they could contact me through email and I can answer that for them later.
Okay, great. Has Ecology awarded grants for projects in the WSDOT right-of-way?
Oh, that's a great question, and I don't know. So one of the things we may find out in the future is if we try to go out for grant funding somehow, because this money has to be specifically spent, it's more likely we would probably end up rolling over money if we needed additional funds into the next year to use it for these projects.
Okay. Are there any other questions or any other comments?
Yeah, we were a little unique in that we were proposing to do a lot of this work in the WSDOT right-of-way. So I don't believe anyone else has done this type of proposal yet. So it's going to be something we're going to learn here in the future. Okay,
great. So if there's no other questions from other people, oh, here's another one. Are there existing benefits of dispersion to medians, and was that evaluated? Anybody?
Yeah, I can take that. We didn't specifically. I think the question is how do kind of retrofitting filter strips versus compared to existing benefits of kind of dispersion to the existing. We didn't compare the existing situation, but we did look at whether there was a possibility to provide uplift and improve, the stormwater runoff with kind of known methods of treatment. I think that answers the question.
Okay. I actually have a question. So this was just in Thurston County, correct? It was outside of the Olympia and Tumwater and Lacey, their MS4s. So, but Thurston County itself has an MS4 permit, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so, but you are with Thurston County, so this was just a Thurston County project. Did you do coordination with the other jurisdictions?
Oh, we didn't coordinate with the other jurisdictions. We were coordinating with WSDOT because this is just solely for Thurston County.
Got it. Okay. All right. We have 10 more minutes for questions. Are there any others? All right, Elisa, it doesn't look like there's any other questions.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for joining. Just a reminder, the session is being recorded, so you'll be able to have access to it after the conference starting next week. If there's no other questions, we are going to say thank you to our presenters and thank you everyone for joining us at this session. Oh, it looks like there's one question in the chat.
Oh, the question is sort of general. How was working with WSDOT? Like, what was your experience, I think is what they're asking.
My experience working with WSDOT has been really great. They've been extremely supportive of this project. They've been very open, and you know, they're also looking at it as ways that they can get a benefit from this as well, and not just the county. So it's been a really great experience working with WSDOT so far.
Great. All right, well, if there's not any other questions, I'll wait just a couple of seconds here to see. I would like to thank you guys again. This is an amazing project, and I'll probably be contacting you about this because this is a great, great project.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry, there's another question. Okay, with medians disappearing and highways being widened, what are some alternatives and designs to stormwater control?
Do you want to take this one, Adam?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, reduce right-of-way makes it more challenging to manage runoff. So some of the options that we kind of came up with were either vegetated filter strips along the edges when it is draining to the median, sometimes piping it to the outside and implementing a biofiltration swale, or one of our designs involved a constructed wetland. But yeah, that is a challenge with acquiring right-of-way.
Right, and I hope that we'll come up with some more technologies. I know there's a couple of things being researched at WSU and the Stormwater Center for those narrow spots. After this study, do you think other factors could be used in your GIS analysis to prioritize?
I think there could be. The main issue is that the funding requirements are pretty specific. So as long as it meets those requirements for how the money is spent. And the other issue is the county also wanted to keep the projects in line with our capital facilities planning. So for us, it kind of narrows down that box a little bit, but I don't see why not.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, with that, thank you again. Take care and enjoy the rest of Municon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.